You have put yourself up for election as a school trustee. What and who are you representing and why?
When you go through life, at some point you have to decide you're going to do something for your community. And I have friends who've decided they're going to run for an office, then a higher office, then a higher office, then a higher office, and and I just decided the way I was going to give back is serve my community in one role and do it well, and do it well enough that people don't have to worry and they'll know that that part of our social structure in our town is well run and can be counted on for, so they can worry about other purposes. So I've served 6 terms of 4 years, and I'm up for another 4-year term. It's pretty straightforward. It's not a, oh, and I basically make myself available when anybody wants to talk on. And you know, we have challenges. Our nation is changing. The population mix is changing. The need for different kinds of education are changing. We're sitting here looking at a GoPro camera, you know, instead of having somebody with a tripod and a whole extra person. And you know, newspapers that get run at, you know, big fancy, you know, that have all this much more central control of communication. It's an interesting thing to do, and it's a worthwhile thing to do.
You selected to put yourself up for election as a school trustee. Please describe the top 3 issues in this race, the importance of each, and how you plan to solve them.
First and foremost, it's about creating opportunities for young people. There's some college background in my family, but mostly my family's in the trades. And they own their own businesses. We're not, you know, we're not rich, we're not poor. We've been able to make our own way through life. But there's a lot of kids where the doors get shut. Early on, they're not even told that the doors are shut. There's no class that says you're not going to go to college, but they don't even get invited to academic English or math that they need to be successful. And they're perfectly happy to do some other low-level algebra or sports or some other interest that doesn't have the kind of economic potential. And as this country changes, and it has, California's really new. California's only been around since 1849. It really is a brand new country. The doors have to be open so everybody's got a chance. So that's probably the most important thing, is to keep the doors open so everybody's got a chance. I did a high school, and then I got for my high school graduation, I got a membership in the Teamsters Union, and I had a good job that paid well. And because I had a good job and paid well, I got to go 2 years at JC, and I got to go to the University of California at Berkeley, one of the top 10 universities on the planet. And those doors should be open to every kid that wants to work hard enough to get there. Pretty simple. And the doors, and there's a lot of places where that's not the case. People have their finger on the scale, and some people get the opportunity and other people get shunted off to the side. So that shouldn't be how it is. Doesn't mean, you know, you can't make everybody smart, but you can at least make sure the doors are open.
Right.
So, pretty simple.
Yeah.
I think that's 3 reasons.
It's a good one. This position as a school trustee requires you to govern yourself based on a code of ethics. Why?
Well, there's every place in life you're trusted to take a certain conduct. I mean, if you're going to kindergarten, your parents trust that you'll behave in a certain way. Every place in life, and the more you're consistent and capable of doing that, the more trust people place in you, and you don't lose it. A friend of mine went to college and earned a degree in a bar. Passed the bar and was an attorney. And unfortunately, he was in the Nixon administration and lied his way along and got disbarred in the process. And I don't know if he spent jail time. His wife got disbarred, I think, too, but I think he spent 6 months in tennis jail someplace. If you don't conduct yourself to a high standard of ethics, you get caught at some point along the way. And if it's finally, you know, in the afterlife, maybe, but you gotta treat others, you gotta honor your word and live up to a standard, and then good things will come together. There's not a reason. That's just where you ought to start with. You ought to start with that premise. Just, you know, like, I guess, you know, that just ought to be the foundation of where you start from. Is we're going to tell the truth and we're going to do our best. And if you don't, you ought to get caught. You ought to get to go to jail.
Right. This position as a school trustee is governed by a California education code. In what way is this governance involved?
Schools are very strange in that they're primarily governed by state standards. The local school boards, we have a 7-member board, most are 5. You're diluted by the fact you're a board. You're diluted by the fact that the state defines most of the rules and processes. It's really it's a amateur hour kind of political office, and everybody goes to a lot of trouble to tell you how important you are, but it's in some big picture way, the rules for how you conduct yourself and the audits and the controls that are put in place prevent really terrible behavior, but they also prevent really extraordinary behavior. So you're sort of in this cattle run of schools, and you try to do something extraordinary. If you want to see extraordinary, you need to go to Branson or, you know, San Domenico or someplace who has a different governance structure, which is every family pays $50,000 and then pays close attention to what's going on. So public education is kind of this middle of the road exercise, but a lot of kids benefit. Most of the society is depending on the quality of public education, not on private schools. You know, this country would not work without public education.
Right. This position as a school trustee has the capacity to harm the community if done inappropriately. Describe what situations would look like if done appropriately as far as you are concerned.
Well, my focus has been on fiscal accountability first and foremost, and that's the easy part. There's lots and lots of business rules and auditors and ways to make sure you're spending the money in an accountable way. But more than just not waste the money, you have to find a way to effectively use money. And in the years I've served, we've effectively used the money. So the school district's solvent, the quality of the education's medium, high. Maybe not the top it could be, but it's on balance an effective use of the funds. The other part is just the ethical standards that you hold and set as a standard for the superintendent and every teacher and every teacher's aide and the way of conduct. And that's I think that's the other part of the leadership. It's not just making sure you don't squander the money. It's making sure you provide moral leadership, and it's not religious leadership. Just do what you say and you follow through.
Right. This position as a school trustee requires you to exercise cooperation with the public and control of yourself. How would you do that, and why do you think it's necessary?
Oh well, so the basic rule, which I've told my daughter, who's a school teacher, teaches high school math, is that enemies will remember you 10 times longer than friends. So you need to have the even number of enemies and friends in life. You need to make 10 times as many friends as you make enemies, because the enemies will stick around and find you and work and torment you, and friends will move on. So you have to, in a very significant bias, like 10 to 1, be able to make friends. And that means, and just to get along. And it's not what happens in the first year, the second year, the third year. It's what happens in the 10th year and the 20th year and the 30th year. So you gotta do a good job of representing the community. You gotta listen to everybody. You gotta hear their good ideas. You gotta believe everybody's got a good idea. And maybe you don't implement them, but you gotta listen for them. And you gotta make sure they understand that they can always have a conversation,
Right.
even if you don't agree with them, because they might this time have a better idea than you.
Right. And the final question, in the nature of public trust, there are funds that are filled through and used as part of this position. You would be required to manage such a budget. What would be the 3 criteria to ensure that money is not adversely spent?
Well, first of all, you got to record what you do. You got to require a system that records it so it's reviewable. If you don't measure and have records, then none of the rest of the stuff you need to do can happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got to make sure you understand the legal requirements. That's pretty obvious. You know, if the money is restricted to only use for athletics, then only use it for athletics. It's restricted to only use for new construction or construction, not programs. You don't use it to pay teacher salaries. You use it to build something. So there's a pretty deep body of knowledge you have to make sure you spend the money according to the rules, because the rules are pretty complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And then after all that's said and done, somehow you have to figure out how to run an institution that's, you know, that not only played by the rules but came up with a good outcome. So you got to be not just play by the rules, you got to be smart. And you know, that usually takes listening to other people. Nobody complains if you're making money. But Bernie Madoff, when he finally, everybody liked him until there was no money left, and then nobody liked him because he had stolen them blind. You gotta plan. You gotta hold yourself to a high standard and play with an open set of books. Not most institutions don't do that. It's you know, try to centennial the credit card issues of houses being foreclosed. People were being given loans that they can't afford, that they never could afford.
Mm-hmm.
The clear outcome was people were going to spend all their money on a mortgage and then lose their house because they were underwater and they didn't have the income, or the house was never going to be worth enough to carry the mortgage. So that just set people up to lose. We ought to have a good set of financial training for every young person who's stepping into an adult role, because at some point you got to buy a car, you got to buy a house, you got to manage your finances, you got to get to end life without going broke.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't train that in college. I don't know if there's a class on this campus that does it. There's very few at high school. You end up learning the hard way, either from your parents or family, or you have some severe financial problems and learn it in the street. It's hard.
Right. Well, thanks a lot for your time, Ross, and I really appreciate it.